So, the last video was about individualist subjectivism, and now I'm going to discuss cultural subjectivism. And cultural subjectivism, one way of cashing it out is almost the same, it's almost analyzing moral sentences in just the same way individualist subjectivism is, but it's treating the speaker as a whole society, a whole culture, a group of people. And so you might say X is good could be cashed out then as SP approves of X. Sorry. So SP here, what does that mean? It's a fancy formal symbol for society, the society in which P is a member, so P is our speaker from before. That society approves of X, right? So this doesn't necessarily entail that P, the guy in the society, the guy who's a member of the society, is going to agree with the society. It doesn't necessarily entail that P approves of X. So now you've got something, now you've got a theory where you can have moral disagreement. You can have the guy who has a certain belief, or the girl who has a certain belief, say Mary, and she says that, slavery is good, slavery is great, right? She's an American, she's a white supremacist, she says that slavery is fantastic, right? That might not be approved of in contemporary America. In fact, it probably wouldn't be. People would chastise her for that belief. They would say, you're completely wrong about that. And that looks like a plausible thing that seems to happen every day. Members of the KKK, members of white supremacist groups often get chastised by American society, even though they might not be chastised in another society. Let's say SK, where the society where a person K is a member. That society might, be white supremacist. It might be full of an island of white supremacists, and it would be a paradise for P if she could go there, but she can't. She's stuck in America, and America disapproves of X. And so this sort of theory explains a lot about how we use sort of moral language a lot better anyway than individualist subjectivism does, and it's still a nice subjectivist relativist theory, which coheres with these anti-realists, general theory, their general idea that moral language is really, just a subjective matter. It's not really objective. It's not about facts or stuff like that. So is this right? Humer here in chapter 3 doesn't really give us a lot of resources to work with on this, because he just thinks this whole thing is really, really silly, right? So his example is, for individualist subjectivism, and you could cast this out for cultural subjectivism too, is, somebody, believes that killing the Jews is good, right? Let's say Nazi Germany thinks that killing the Jews is good, right? Now suppose you say, well, Nazi Germany thinks that killing the Jews is good. I'm a German, so clearly killing the Jews is a good idea. I should kill the Jews because, cultural relativism is true, so therefore killing the Jews is a good idea. That's not... Immediately we say to ourselves, that moral theory is dumb. It's saying that things like killing the Jews could be okay, and then it could suddenly not be okay in 1980 because it's no longer Nazi Germany or whatever. And that seems kind of weird. Why would moral properties shift around like that? The relativist might respond to us by saying, you're getting it wrong here. The idea is not that society approving of X being good means that you suddenly should do X. Suddenly you should feel this burst of motivation to go ahead and go out and kill the Jews, right? That would be bad. Well, that wouldn't be morally bad, but it would be... starting to see how silly this is, right? That wouldn't be morally bad, but it would be, prudentially bad. You wouldn't like to kill the Jews. Don't kill the Jews just because society says you should kill the Jews. Kill the Jews because you want to kill the Jews, or something. I don't know. But it's sort of... The point of the theory is that goodness doesn't really track this useful property. It might be useful in some sense, but really what it's tracking is the norms that a particular society has adopted for whatever evolutionary reason, right? So various societies might approve of various different things. That's probably fixed by sociology and those laws. And you might say, well, okay, so you might fire back to the subjectivist clarifying this point, and you might say, well, okay, fine, I get that, but then you're removing a lot of what it means to be good, right? Because what I think when I say, when somebody says, this thing is 100% good, what that means is it 100%. It should motivate me 100% to do that thing, right? There is no loss for me doing that thing. I should be motivated to do it. Goodness seems to have some kind of motivating aspect to it. It seems like if something's good morally, then I ought to do it. It would be a great idea for me to do it, practically speaking, as well. And so how might the subjectivists respond to this? The cultural subjectivists, they might say, okay, fair enough. I get that. I get that you want that. So how about this, right? That's got by this theory in the sense that a society approving of something very likely is going to mean that the thing is sort of beneficial or useful to you in some way, right? It's probably going to mean that evolution put the members of that society in a place where if they develop that set of norms, it will be a good idea for you to follow them, right? So let's say in America you have the societal norm not to rape. That societal norm is good just because societies where there's no rape tend to prosper, tend to have high survivability rates, etc., etc. And this is where cultural relativists start to get on board the naturalist train, and we'll discuss naturalism later. But they're sort of trying to cash out goodness in terms of naturalistic explanations, right? And this commits what you might understand as the naturalistic fallacy. Just because something is evolutionarily good, evolutionarily beneficial, right? Just because something is helping with survival, just because something makes you happier, doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, or that it's a good idea to follow it, or that you should do it, even rationally speaking, not just morally speaking, but rationally speaking. But in any case, we'll get to that. For now, humor doesn't really give us much material to work with on cultural relativism. It just says, it suffers from the same nonsensical problems that individualist subjectivism does. How does a particular society, just ignore the fact that killing the Jews is right according to that society, and then it suddenly just became wrong because society shifted into it being wrong? But if you were to time travel back to Nazi Germany, it would be okay again. Suddenly you would be confused if you thought that killing the Jews was bad. You would be an idiot. You would have to switch your beliefs to the Nazi German beliefs because that would be the right thing to do. It's very weird. It's kind of like it makes morality into this sort of weird kind of time shifting thing. Anyway, what the final sort of nail in the coffin that humor tries to put out for this is, how do individualist subjectivists or cultural subjectivists even explain how something got to be approved of? How did anything ever get to be believed to be good by a particular society or a particular individual? Why do people have the moral beliefs that they have? Why is rape considered wrong in this society? If you're a moral realist, you can say, well, because there are certain properties in the world that rape has, value properties, and they're negative value properties. Rape has negative value. It's bad, and you detect that it's bad, you see that it has those properties, and then you believe that it's bad. If you're this kind of person, you think that it's just bad. It just happens to be bad. The society just happens to disapprove of it, so it happens to be bad. It's arbitrary. That's kind of a weird explanation. Scientists don't really like those kinds of explanations. Psychologists especially don't. So again, the naturalist theories of ethics would certainly help cultural relativists and individualist subjectivist relativists sort of get off the ground with their theories. For now, we're just going to discard them because they seem false. You might still believe them, might come up with objections about them, but in any case, the next theories that we're going to be discussing are absolutist subjectivist theories, which are the more popular theories these days. ideal observer theory and divine command theory. And there's certainly very interesting aspects to those. So